Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome to episode 9 of the UK Genesis podcast. I'm your host, Gary Jones, and joining me today we have two different guests. In terms of, you may notice that my usual co-host Ben is not here today. He's off gallivanting around the country. I think he's meeting a client actually, but we'll see what he's up to. So co-hosting with me today, I've got Joe Waltham. Hi, Joe.
Hi. I'm Joe Waltham. I've gone blank now.
You're Joe Waltham, that's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. Yeah.
Listen to episode 1 of the podcast if you want to know more about Jo, because she was our very first guest on there as well. And also join us as the main guest today is Sue Fernandes. Hi, Sue.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to yourself.
Yeah, I am a freelance web developer from Stockport, which is near Manchester.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more other than just where you are?
Yeah, I obviously work from home. I'm self-employed, and I work mainly with small businesses and clients, big and small. Really, I'll work with anybody if I can. I work predominantly with WordPress and with Genesis as my main framework. And I spend a lot of time working on custom-built themes based on Genesis, the Genesis sample theme.
Okay. So, if anyone would like to ask Sue a question, please send us a tweet and use the hashtag UKGenesis, and we'll pick it up and ask it later on in the show. So, Sue, can you? How long have you been working with Genesis and WordPress, or how did you find Genesis?
Well, I started working with web development about 12 years ago, where I started working with Front Page, just designing sort of template websites based on that platform. And then I moved on to working with straight HTML and CSS. And I came to WordPress really as a blog, which was, I'd actually added it as a secondary blog to one of my websites that I developed in HTML. Back in sort of 2004, and then it just sort of took over from there. Really, I decided that it was it had far more worth than just as a blogging platform. So then I started looking into really building my own themes and getting into working out how all the themes actually worked and the structure of the themes, and then it just took off from there really. And then that naturally followed on to looking for a really good framework that I could use when I wanted to build custom themes, so I didn't have to sort of start from scratch every single time. And somebody introduced me to Genesis, and I've never really looked back from there.
Okay. So would you say your main service is, excuse me, is design and development, or do you provide SEO as well, copyright?
I provide an SEO service in terms of organic SEO. I use Yoast to optimization on page. I don't provide a full range of SEO services because I just simply don't have the time and the skill set to provide those sort of with any form of guarantee. So once we get to that level of SEO, then I actually have a colleague that I work with who provides those sort of SEO services. So then I move clients through the process to those at the end of the build.
Okay. And so is it just you in the business, or do you work regularly with sort of outsourced partners?
No, I do. I have a network of people that I work with regularly. I work with a really good graphic designer as when needed. And he in turn works with me when he needs development services, so it's a reciprocal agreement. I also work with a content writer and a photographer for those sort of services as well. I discovered very early on that trying to do absolutely everything by myself was extremely counterproductive in terms of producing good websites. I'm a good developer, I'm a passable designer, but I'm not a graphic designer. And trying to do all those sort of things doesn't really give a good end result. So now I've learnt my lesson and I outsource those sort of things where it's needed.
How did you kind of come to know about and kind of set up this arrangement with these creative partners you've got?
Well, I joined a networking group about 18 months, 2 years ago, and really sort of made connections through that with other people who were doing those sort of similar services. And I met them through the networking group. I got to know them. I got to understand what they did, and I got to understand more importantly what they could do for me, what I could do for them. And I trust them, so that I'm happy then recommending their services onto my, picking a name out of the phone book, so to speak.
Are they all?
It works really well.
Are they all local to you? Are they all Stockport, Manchester based?
Yeah, pretty much local, mostly local based. The content writer's in Warrington, but mostly local based. So that we can actually sort of sit down, meet up for coffee, discuss a project face to face. It works much easier that way, I always find. And then a lot of Skype meetings as well, from sort of start to finish. But it depends on the scope of the project and what the project actually needs, and of course what the budget of the client is. That always seems to be the sort of deciding factor.
So what's your kind of workflow in terms of getting that initial lead and kind of working out what they need and perhaps which creative partners you need to get involved, and how do you kind of move that along to actually producing an end product for them?
What I try and do is I always have an initial meeting with the client, and we go through the goals for the website, what exactly they're trying to achieve in terms of final result and functionality. And from that I can really then work out what is in my wheelhouse, and then what other partners I need to bring onto the project. And then I produce a written proposal which includes all of those factors and costings for those factors, which then the client agrees to with an attached contract as well. And then I make sure they pay an initial deposit before I actually start to do any work with anybody. I've been bitten by that before, where I've sort of gone ahead and done a load of work, and then the client's gone to actually change their mind. So initial proposal in writing with a contract and deposit before I do any more work, and then I start a local development site there from there.
So do you have any particular tools that you use for that whole proposal writing, contract management, invoicing, or that whole initial space?
I use basically I use a PDF template which I've created myself for proposals. I also use the Killer Contract, which was produced by Andrew Clark from Stuff and Nonsense, which is a really good, well-written, easy to understand contract, which I've sort of tweaked to fit my business. I use an online accounting program called Free Agent, which is a really good platform which provides me with estimates. I've got it gives me a basic CRM system, so I've got all my contacts listed there. I've got invoicing through there, time tracking through there, and it even goes right the way through to keeping updated with all my bank accounts and producing my tax returns as well. It's a really, really good platform. I think it's like £15 a month, which is nothing. So that allows me to keep a good on what's coming in.
So talking of sort of invoicing and stuff like that, how do you do your pricing? Do you do alley rate? Do you do value-based pricing or fixed pricing?
I do. It depends on the project really, and the scope of the project. I do a lot of work with projects that have sort of. I find a lot of clients will come to me if they've had a site developed by a developer, which in itself isn't a bad site, but the developers disappeared off into the ether. And I then do a lot of time-based pricing for ongoing maintenance, updates, and future work. I also do a lot of project-based for new builds, and value-based where the project scope requires it for sort of e-commerce and that sort of thing. So it really, I've got to look at the project scope at the beginning to see what is involved with that before deciding on what kind of pricing to go with. I'm not saying I've not been bitten many times in the past on pricing. That's one of the things I still struggle with, because there's no rule set for it.
Yeah. Jackie's asked a question here saying, why do you think clients choose you versus buying a theme and try to build it themselves? And what is your typical client like?
I think a lot of clients want something custom. They want something that is personal to them rather than just a bought theme. A lot of clients, even though if they've bought a theme, they don't necessarily understand how to implement the theme, or indeed to add their own content and make it work the way they want it to do. So I have had a few clients come to me who have actually bought a theme and then downloaded it and have no clue how to make it look like the theme looked on ThemeForest or whatever. So I've actually worked with clients where all I've done is gone in and integrated a theme for them, which they've bought. So it just depends on the client themselves, but most of the clients that I have want specific functionality, they want a specific look, they want their branding to be integral to the theme, and that's something that you can't really get with an off-the-shelf theme. Okay. And easily, and make it easily.
And another question for Devinda here. What percentage of your time is split between design, development, and other tasks on a project?
I'd say 30% design, 60% development. Probably in that sort of ratio. Although it depends on the scope. If I work with a couple of graphic design agencies where they'll actually send me the finished PSD for the site, and then I'll convert that into a Genesis child theme, which means that I don't do any design work at all. It's purely then development. So again, it depends on the project itself.
And where do you see your business going in 12 months' time? What's your plans?
I'd really like. I think it's going in the way I want it to go. I'd like to be able to increase my prices slightly. I still think I'm probably underpricing for the work that I'm doing. I think that's probably something that's an issue for everybody, knowing where to judge those prices. I'd like to be able to work more with a collective of professionals who work together to really good projects without having to take on an agency and staff and all those sort of headaches that come with that. I like the collaboration that I find especially within the WordPress and Genesis communities, where you can collaborate with other professionals and really produce super results from that.
Just you mentioned earlier kind of about collecting deposits. Can we ask, how do you determine kind of what percentage or proportion of a quote needs to be paid up front for a deposit?
Well, I always work on for a project based or any sort of collective fee. I work on 25% up front with a further 25% after 4 weeks, and then a final balance prior to the site going live. I think it's important for everybody to have some skin in the game all the way through the project, so that people don't sort of wander off halfway through. And I found the sort of the 4 week mark tends to be where you've left the sort of the design and sort of the fact finding phase behind, and you're really sort of getting into the nitty gritty of the development. And it keeps things on track and reminds people that things still need to go forward.
Do you often find that projects are held up because of you being busy, or because the client hasn't provided the information they need? Which tends to be kind of
99 times out to be always on content. I always find that clients who we start off great, and then once it comes to I need some content from you now, then that's when things tend to slow down considerably. I think all developers find the same thing. It's really hard, and I think it's very easy for us to sort of say, oh yeah, you can just produce some content, but actually for a lot of my clients particularly, actually sitting down and writing content is a really, really hard thing to do, which is why I like to work with a content writer, because at least then we can offer them sort of some backup and assistance in actually providing that just a few paragraphs that they may find really hard to write. Without me screaming down their ear going, yeah, just get it to me. But yeah, always the content is always the one that is the hold up.
Okay, so we know you're based up in Stockport near Manchester. Can you tell us about the Manchester WordPress User Group that you kind of go to and involved with?
Well, the Manchester User Group is run by Mike Little, who is the co-founder of WordPress. He's been running it for about 6-7 years now. And he's been phenomenal to me. I started going to the group about 3 years ago because I'd got to the point where I could only Google so much about WordPress and without driving myself totally insane. So I joined the group, and he took me under his wing, and he really sort of helped me along. Just in learning the development side of WordPress rather than the getting the pages up and getting the posts up. And yeah, I've been involved ever since. I'm now involved with a project that he's just started called WP Velocity, which is a WordPress clinic, which he runs on a Saturday once a month, where we actually have a WordPress user that come in, and we'll spend the day with them just going through their site and you know, ironing out any bugs and fixing sort of small problems that people have with WordPress. But yeah, I attribute entirely me being a professional web developer to joining the Emerald Group in Manchester. I can't recommend it highly enough to anybody.
Is that like a monthly event?
Yeah, it's monthly. It's the third Wednesday of every month, which is at Mad Lab in the Northern Quarter in Manchester, and everybody's really willing to come along. We always do a little clinic during the meetup as well, where you know, anybody can bring any questions or problems along, bring their laptop, and one of us will sit down and try and sort of, you know, fix problems or help with things that people are stuck on. You know, and it doesn't really matter what level you are with WordPress. You know, there's always somebody there who is either got more knowledge than you, got less knowledge than you. It doesn't really matter. So you know, nobody should feel an idiot and be afraid of going along to these groups. There's always somebody willing to help you.
Yeah, everybody. This was new to everybody at one point or another.
Exactly. We were all in that boat once, you know.
Yeah.
And fair enough. Now we're not. We want to give something back to those that are, because we remember how painful it can be.
Have you been involved or attended any WordCamps?
Yeah, the first WordCamp I did was in Lancaster back in 2012, and I was really green then. I hadn't been sort of involved with the WordPress community for very long, and I just spent the entire weekend going around, sort of listening to people and absorbing everything. I then went to Sheffield last year, 2014, and then Birmingham, of course, in February this year. And then I was lucky enough, Mike asked me to help organise the Manchester WordCamp last year, and I also volunteered on the day with that one, which was really good. And then we did a contributor day the following day as well, which was excellent.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, if you had to try and sell a WordCamp to a potential attendee, what would you say are the best bits about coming, or why they should attend?
I think it's for the price that they charge for these sort of WordCamps. The amount of knowledge in that room is priceless. You know, I think Manchester would charge like £20. You know, you got a T-shirt and a mug, and it just, you go along and you can sit and absorb knowledge from people who have far more knowledge than I'll ever have, and are happy to share it. You know, and if you can go along and find somebody who's willing to impart that knowledge to you, and you want to pursue WordPress in any sort of serious way, why would you not go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be something for everybody, whether you're a designer or developer or content user or marketer, or even kind of an SEO person who doesn't usually typically kind of work with WordPress related or WordPress run sites. Then there's enough topics and tracks at the different venues to be able to cater for people's different needs. It might not cater for the specific problem you have, but that's where you kind of basically do the whole way track, and you meet up with somebody outside these talks and sessions, and kind of make those relationships, those networking contacts, and also find out something you perhaps didn't even realise you didn't know about.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I don't want to go because it's too technical," but it's really not technical. You know, you can, as long as you've got a working knowledge of sort of what WordPress is, then you know, you will definitely find something there that will teach you and enlighten you about what WordPress can do.
I can relate to that because I've been using WordPress for a few years, and it hadn't occurred to me to attend a WordCamp. And it was Gary who was encouraging me to come along to WordCamp Europe, the first one in Leiden. And so I only really went because Gary said you should really go, and you know, Gary tells you to do it, you do it. And for me, it was just really, really inspiring. It just made me come home all fired up and excited about what I was doing and everything. So yeah. Great.
I remember.
Go on, Sue.
There's a story that Mike Little tells that he went to his first WordCamp, and he had a job at the time, and he was sitting in a room at the WordCamp where they were sort of doing the keynote speech, and they sort of said, "Well, will everybody who makes their living from WordPress put their hand up?" And one of the few people that didn't was Mike Little, who was the co-founder of WordPress, and that was the catalyst that made him actually go and take his business as a freelancer forward. So you know, it's funny how these things can have an effect on your entire life.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people are kind of attend some of the smaller WordCamps and perhaps build up to some of the bigger ones. I think Joe just jumped in at the deep end because go to her first WordCamp, and it's WordCamp Europe, which is obviously one of the big ones anyway. And on the social on the Saturday night, she got to hang out with Matt Mullenweg for a few minutes as well. So it's, you definitely a successful trip.
It was a very successful trip, yeah. From that point of view, got to meet lots of people, yeah.
I also really enjoyed the Genesis meetup that we had at the Birmingham WordCamp as well. I came down on the Friday especially for that, and it was just a really fun evening, and it was really great to meet everybody.
What was interesting about that is that there were a couple of people who I encouraged to come along to that meetup who had never been to a WordCamp before. So a lot of us who went to WordCamp Birmingham hadn't been to a WordCamp before, and I kind of put a little bit of it down to the fact that we had that meetup the night before, so they all knew that they would know someone when it actually came to the WordCamp day. So yeah, that was really good. And,
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, there was it was because just throughout the Saturday and I can't remember if there was a Sunday or the Birmingham or not, that you had somebody to say, well, are you going to this talk? Are you going to that talk? Do you want to go for lunch and so on? So you didn't just feel kind of quite isolated or felt forced to go and try and chat to other people. You had your little kind of Genesis people, but equally, I mean, I think one of them might disappeared for a bit to go and chat to others. So it's just, it is, for me, WordCamps are as much social and networking as they are sitting and listening to talks.
Yeah, completely.
Just whatever you want to take out of it.
Yeah, completely.
What was I going to mention there? So if you're looking out for any information about the Genesis meetups, if you go to ukgenesis.co.uk/meetups, we list on there. I don't think we've got any coming up at the list at the moment, but
there isn't. But we're trying to organise one for WordCamp Europe, where Rianne is going to talk about the accessibility changes in Genesis 2.2 to us. So I haven't actually got that organised yet, but it will go up on there when it is anyway, and we'll announce that in due course. But hopefully we're doing that during, I think on Friday the 27th of June in Seville. So, okay.
Yeah, it won't be broadcast, or I strongly suspect it won't be broadcast or recorded live, so that will just be for attendees only, unfortunately.
Yeah. Just isn't a formal gathering, you know, it's not a talk as such, it's just an informal get together, have a drink sort of thing. Yeah.
We'll just have to follow you on Twitter.
So Sue, in terms of kind of the WordPress community, is there anything you'd like to see kind of disappear? Some negative aspects that you're not keen on?
Nothing really that affects me. I mean, I'm quite sure there's a lot of politic things go on behind the scenes with WordPress, but you know, as a sort of a grassroots user, if you like, there's nothing really within the WordPress community that I've found to be negative. I've never had anything but positive things from it, and you know, it's really supported me as a freelancer. You know, that support from the community is really vitally important. So I just long may it continue, I think.
You probably already answered kind of the next question there, but what's kind of the best thing within the Genesis community?
I think that desire to help each other. I don't think you find that in very many other industries. There's very few industries that you can just go up to somebody and say, "Oh, can you help me out with this?" or "Can you help me out with that?" and they'd be more than happy to do it for you, you know, or at least to help you and point you in the right direction. I found with WordPress community and especially with the Genesis communities, everybody is just so willing to help, and you know, just to get involved and help you out where there's really nothing in it for them. Especially, you know, since I joined the Slack group, you know, the amount of information, the amount of resources, the amount of advice that I've found just from sort of browsing that group on a daily basis, it sucks a lot of my time, but it's so worth it. You know, just from what you can glean from other people's knowledge is just amazing. So yes, I'm really grateful that I sort of came along to Birmingham and met up with all you guys and got involved.
Yeah, the Slack group is really great. I mean, I kind of find that I can have it kind of way gives me courage that I can work something out, because if I get really stuck, I can ask on there, and there will be, it's normally be someone who can point me in the right direction or something like that. So also, I always try and answer as many questions as I can as well, because I know that, you know, you give and you get, you know, so yeah, it's good.
You give and you get. That's a very good thing.
How do you see kind of WordPress, or I guess Genesis as well, kind of changing over the next few years?
Genuinely, I have no idea, but I really can't wait to find out. I think it's going to be an exciting few years. I think the REST API is probably going to be the hugest thing coming through, which I'm still trying to get my head around, and sort of, you know, everything's going to be app-based, and, you know, that's something that I really need to, I want to start really finding out more about. But I just genuinely don't know. I think that's the beauty of WordPress. You just genuinely don't know what's going to come. You know, if you'd asked me 5 years ago whether, you know, WordPress would be what it is today, then I would have, you know, I'd have laughed you out the room probably. But, you know, it just seems to be going from strength to strength to strength. And there's just nothing to beat it now.
I was going to ask a couple of questions that have come in on Twitter, if that's okay. Carlo has asked, what resources do you use to find out about Genesis hooks, filters, and functions?
I use the StudioPress site a lot. I use the wonderful Shridhar Slack. I subscribe to his blog, which just is phenomenal for anything to do with Genesis. And Google. Google is your friend. I find, you know, I Google a lot of things a lot of the time, and 99 times out of 100 I'll find out what I'm looking for. And so yeah, don't be afraid to Google stuff. That was always, that's sort of how I live my life, really. Don't be afraid to Google.
Yeah.
But I also have a clips section as part of my text editor, so I save as much as I can, because at the beginning I didn't save things, and then I found myself Googling the same thing over and over again. So yeah, save your snippets somewhere is the best advice I can give on that.
Good advice, good advice. And Jackie's asked, do you use any accessibility plugins or need internationalization for clients?
I've not had the opportunity to work with any international clients yet, so that's not something I've sort of dipped my toe in. For accessibility, I always check with the Wave website, and I run my sites through there for accessibility purposes. But yeah, I think I'd sort of actively like to work with somebody on internationalization. Just sort of, because it's not something I've had the opportunity to do yet.
Okay. And Ginger just said that she agrees the willingness of the WordPress and Genesis folks to help is a huge contrast from corporate and startup companies. So a big yay for the community there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Go on, sorry.
I don't think I'd have had the confidence to go and work for myself freelance if I didn't feel that I had the backup of that community behind me.
How do you find kind of juggling family life with being kind of presumably self-employed or kind of sole trader?
Well, I've always been self-employed. My background, I came from working for my husband's family company, which was a hotel. So I was office manager in a hotel for 20 years before I made the break and went working for myself. That was far harder than my life now. I work from home, which means I'm self-employed. I work from home, so I've got much more flexibility in terms of family life. So you know, I find myself constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of time. So, you know, if I have to do something with my daughter in the afternoon, then I'll work in the evening or I'll work on the weekend. But it does give you that flexibility that you don't have in an employed job, if you like. So, yeah, I'm grateful for that every day.
How do you try and minimise the distractions? Obviously, some things are essential for kind of family life and so on, but how do you try and minimise distractions from getting in the way of important deadlines?
Office I'm in, and if I'm in my office and the door's closed, then they know I'm working. I shout. I'm lucky that my husband is very good and sort of will take them out of the house if I need to knuckle down and get things done. But yeah, it's, you know, it's as with every job and every home life, it's a compromise. You know, you compromise on your family time to get your work done. As a freelancer, you have that peaks and troughs thing where sometimes you're really busy and you've got a deadline and you know you've got to put your nose to the grindstone, Other times, you know, I can take a couple of days off in a week and spend them with my daughter. So yeah, you know, it swings and roundabouts really. It's just making the most of the time that you've got where you don't have to really push that hard. My older daughter though did my children call it tippy tapping. They say mummy's tippy tapping. And my older daughter did say that I needed to go to Tippy Tappers Anonymous the other day because I was sort of stuck in my office for about 12 hours. So
how old are your daughters?
My youngest is 8 and my oldest is nearly 20. She's off at university though, so not much help anymore.
And Ginger's also asked, what was the turning point for you to take the leap to full-time freelance and to leave your office manager job?
Well, we were selling the business, so I knew that the business was coming to an end, and it had got to the stage where I had to choose what I was passionate about over what was comfortable and I'd been doing for a long time. And I have a real passion for what I'm doing now. I'm one of those nauseating people that say I never go to work because it's my hobby, and you know, and all that sort of thing. So it was I'd got to a point where I knew the business was going. It was never a question of what I wanted to do next. This is always what I wanted to do next. And juggling freelance web design and an office manager's job and young children is not an easy task. So something would have had to give sooner or later, and this would have always been it. I think when you know, you know.
Do you try and kind of, I know you said about the flexibility, but do you try and kind of stick to strict sort of times if possible in terms of breakfast, get the kids out to school and so on, and then at 9 o'clock I'm going to start and I'm going to finish at this time or so on? Do you just, I'll get there when I get there, and as long as I try and do this many hours over a certain period, then you're happy?
Yeah, I try and do 9 till 3 because that's school hours, so I'll drop my daughter off at school and then come back, work right through until pick-up time. Which is fine when I'm sort of in the development phase. If I'm doing client meetings and things, that can be sort of, I sometimes have to sort of juggle things for those. Networking is another thing that I always try and make time for. I always try and network at least once or twice a week, just in order to keep myself out there and keep meeting people, and you know, and that potential stream of new clients coming to me, and people, you know, people forget about you very quickly. So I try and do that on a consistent basis as well, and it's just sort of juggling all those three things really.
I think I read somewhere that kind of the marketing aspect of running your own business should be sort of like 40-50% of your time, just to try and get that new potential leads in, and so on. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it pays off if you're consistent about it. It's the consistency that's the key, as with everything.
Yeah, because if you're then getting a consistent influx, then you can start to kind of be picky and choosy about which clients you take on, and if there's lots you want to take on, then you can start raising your rates more.
Exactly.
So it benefits that way rather than just say, well, I can't do this marketing because I'm spending time doing the actual work, and which will actually get me paid. You need to kind of play the long game rather than just kind of do one and then stop and then try and look again. And
exactly. And when I first started, I wasn't doing networking, and I would have gratefully accepted any client that came my way and any money that they'd been prepared to pay me. You know, it was because I didn't have the confidence to be able to sort of pick and choose. Now, through networking and through the you know, sort of the network of people that I know, I'm far more confident about being able to turn around and say, no, I'm not prepared to work on that project, because I know that there will be another client along, you know, in the not too distant future. And I think once you start getting that confidence, it makes all the difference, and then you can start thinking about your pricing in terms of the value for you, rather than just sort of being grateful for anything people will give you.
Would you ever go back to being an employee, work for another company?
No, I don't think so. I think I like having the flexibility of my life now. When my youngest daughter goes off to school, then it might be an option. But I like working for myself. I like making my own time. I like, you know, not being dictated to. So yeah, long may that continue.
A question from Jackie says about continuing education. How do you keep up with changes? So kind of, you say you network once or twice a week. How often do you kind of set some time aside to look at latest technologies or kind of research things that might be useful either for the current project or for the next project?
That's a really difficult thing to do, and it's one that I'm woefully inadequate at. I tend to do I'll learn what I need to do for the project, and then I'll reuse that in another project at another time. I did have this idea of sort of setting aside 1 day a month for learning, but that never seems to get fitted into the schedule because there's always something more pressing. But yeah, it's something that I need. I've got a long list of to-do things, of stuff that I want to learn. I've just started a reseller hosting account which I want to get involved in, and get that up and running. And there are a lot of things that I need to schedule some time to do. So yeah, it's about scheduling at the end of the day.
Have you had a chance to play with Genesis 2.2 beta?
Oh yeah, not yet. Again, that's on my to-do list. I'm going to find some time this weekend, I think, for that one.
Is there anything that you might have heard about it that you're interested in terms of what it might add?
Not really. I've not really looked into it in any great detail. So I think there's a lot more accessibility stuff coming in with it now. So yeah, I'd like to do some research on that. Find some time to do some research on that. Yeah, ready for when it does come in.
Cool. Okay, so we've just gone halfway through our show here with Sue Fernandes. If you've got any more questions for Sue, please get them in on Twitter with the UK Genesis hashtag. Let's start on our quickfire rounds. Jo, do you want to take the questions for the quickfire round?
Okay. So, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be something creative and something technical, but I didn't really have any idea what. And then, of course, I got married and then I went to work for the family company, so it was never really an issue. So I was quite a late bloomer, really. I didn't really come into my own until I was sort of 40. So now I know that this is what I should have been doing all along.
It's funny that, isn't it, how that goes?
Mm.
Do you use Mac or PC?
Mac. I do have a PC for testing, but yeah, Mac all the time.
And what code editor do you use?
I use Coda too for Mac.
Oh, not a Sublime Text.
Not Sublime Text, although that again, I have got a copy of Sublime Text which I'm starting to play with at the moment. But yeah, I've used Coda for about 3 or 4 years now, and I've built up a really good repository of sort of snippets and things in there. So I like the fact that you can work both locally and through FTP on it, and it sort of does everything for me really. So yeah, I'm looking at Sublime Text there.
So you're saying you use Coda to manage your snippets, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Coda has a really good, it's called Clips section, which and then it's just a double click and it'll insert into your code. So, and I've built up a really good repository in there.
Nice.
So that's sort of my go-to.
And what do you use for localhost?
I use Desktop Server.
Okay. And what do you use to deploy those sites?
Again, Desktop Server. So that sounds to be sort of my whole local environment is Desktop Server.
And what do you use for design or creating wireframes and mock-ups and that sort of thing?
First and foremost, pen and pencil. I'm old school. I like to write. I like to draw things. It's much easier to sort of change things on a piece of paper. And then Photoshop, if it's a sort of complicated design, or I do a lot of my design in the browser now. So I sort of cut out the middleman.
Okay. And what's your must-have plugins?
First of all, advanced custom fields. I use that pretty much on every site. And then either Gravity Forms or Contact Form 7, depending on the scope of the project. Again, sometimes Gravity Forms can be a bit of an overkill. WordPress SEO, Yoast, I always put on. And I always put on a little plugin called CMS Tree Page View.
Ooh, that one.
Which gives you a like a little menu of all your pages and posts right on the dashboard, which I find really helps sort of navigating my way around when I'm doing development.
Oh, nice.
And then Jetpack, obviously, I always include Jetpack as and when.
Okay. And do you have a starter theme for Genesis?
Yes, I do. I have one. I actually got it from a Google search. It was actually a guy called Greg Rindell who provided it. And I got that about 2 years ago, which was sort of a starter theme for Genesis. And then I've modified it and changed it over sort of the last couple of years, so it now includes all the bits and pieces that I use on every site. So, and that gives me a really good base blank starter theme to build from. So yeah, that's the one I use.
And have you ever written a public plugin? Do you have anything in the repo?
No, no,
Or a public theme?
no. I do write themes, but only for client sites. I don't write them for public. I did spend a little bit of time with the theme as the contributor day that we did at Manchester WordCamp. I actually did a couple of theme reviews for the WordPress repository, and they're really tough to get in. There's a lot of boxes you need to tick. So it's something I would like to do one day, but only when I've really got some time to spend.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to see changed in the WordPress in the Genesis framework?
No, at the moment, no. I think it's a really good piece of a framework. It can be slightly difficult to navigate around if you want to do something specific. I was trying to sort of do something with the sidebar the other day, which didn't have an immediate hook, which I sort of was a bit frustrated with. Whereas, of course, in a basic WordPress theme, you just go in and edit the sidebar page. So small things like that, but overall, overwhelmingly, it's just made my life so much easier. It's just a joy to use, really.
Okay. Right, Gary's just typing a question, which I assume he wants me to ask. What are the benefits of Genesis to developers?
I think, first and foremost, that it gives you a solid framework to build a child theme on. I come across a lot of older sites. People come to me and sort of with an old WordPress site that they sort of allowed to get out of too old. And a lot of the themes are just sort of hacked up pieces of old WordPress themes. And at least with Genesis, you've got that secure foundation that you can then build on top of. And the secure foundation is always going to be updated and secure. And especially if you're selling sites to clients, you need to sell them something that's going to be secure for years to come. And Genesis gives you that without you having to really write too much of that content yourself.
And what would you say are the benefits of Genesis to users, to your clients?
I will say that most of my clients aren't really aware of Genesis. As long as they get the final result that they're looking for, they don't really want to go too much into sort of what the code is and why it's there. That's what they're paying me for at the end of the day. But it does allow me to give them that security that what I've sold them is going to stand them in good stead for a few years, and they're not going to have to worry about a security issue a couple of months down the line because I haven't written the core code correctly.
How much do you consider accessibility, internationalization, localization, and right-to-left scripts when creating themes for clients?
Accessibility, yes, I do to a degree. Although a lot of times, if I'm working on a site that's been designed by somebody else and I'm just in the development on it, can be quite difficult and challenging. I have a lot of conversations with clients about things like contrasting colours and things like that, especially when they've got branding already in place. So I check through Wave and try and do as best I can on accessibility. The others, as I said before, haven't had any real opportunities to sort of try them yet. But I think as a challenge, then I'd definitely bring it on.
Are you aware of Genesis Camp coming up in July?
I am. Are you scheduled time? I'm not presenting. I believe it's too late now to put your name down, isn't it? I think they're...
If it wasn't too late, what topic would you want to present on?
I think I'd like to do something on advanced custom fields because I find that I find the integration with advanced custom fields and Genesis just so simple. They blend so well together.
So what do you use that? You said you put advanced custom fields on most sites that you build. What are you generally using it for?
Well, first and foremost, I always create an options page. So what I do is I create an options page with custom fields. So I have custom for the Twitter handle, Facebook, telephone number, company address, all those sort of things that appear more than once on a site. So that then I can hard code them in with the custom field rather than the actual data, so that if in future the client changes their telephone number or their email address, it's a really simple matter of changing that in the options field rather than having to go back into the code within 3 or 4 places. I find that's the easiest way to start.
Sorry, I was saying, do you do any training for your clients in terms of where they can enter this data and how to use WordPress generally?
Yeah, I always do a training session with my clients at the end of each build, because there's absolutely no point in spending a lot of time and money creating a site for somebody, handing it over to them, and because they don't have the knowledge to use it properly, they just never do, which means they never add any new blog posts, or they never edit the pages, or they never work with it. So each project has to have some form of training in order to familiarise the client with the work that they're expected to do.
Pressed off. Yeah.
Did we crash a bit?
No, I think we're still there.
Still there.
Can you? I see on your website, your SueFernandes.co.uk website, the kind of orangey, flowery logo. Can you see? Kind of tell me where that came inspired from?
Just say again, I missed that.
On your logo on your website, the orange kind of flower petals effect. Can you tell me where that was inspired, or how that was inspired?
I started my website's gone through many incarnations. I actually had to sit on my hands at one point to stop myself messing around with it anymore. And I started with sort of that grey and orange theme back when I first started, and just sort of wanted to keep that going through my branding, really, although the branding itself changed, and I was just messing around with Photoshop when I came up with those petals. But the colour scheme has stayed the same, so I've sort of got a continuity in colour rather than a continuity in logo.
Okay, so we've just got 10-15 minutes left of the show left, so if you've got any more questions, put them on Twitter, UK Genesis, hashtag please. When we met briefly, Sue, you mentioned that, I can't quite remember the story, which I'm hoping you'll tell us, that you ended up doing kind of 20 or 30 sites. Was it a child theme conversion or something like that? You mentioned that you'd taken off another developer?
Oh yeah, I had a contact through networking had come to me and said that she was a WordPress developer, but she decided that after a number of years it wasn't for her, and she'd gone down the route of getting herself a job. So she wanted someone that she could handle these sites off to, and for ongoing maintenance and changes. Most of the sites were then built on 2010. Some not on child themes as well, which was a bit of a disaster. So what we've done is we've sort of, and it's still ongoing, that we're working through all those sites and trying to bring them back up to speed. And of course now with the new Google mobile rules coming in, a lot of those sites aren't mobile responsive. So we're slowly working through them all to, along with the clients, redevelop them and bring them firstly onto Genesis, but secondly to make them responsive and to bring them back up to date. So yeah, it's been quite an ongoing project, shall we say.
Do you offer maintenance packages generally to all your clients?
I do. I always offer a maintenance package to my clients because, and that's part of my initial proposal as an option. And then if they take it up as an option, then I charge a monthly fee to do all the WordPress updates and plugin updates, and also to keep a regular backup. It amazes me how many people don't have a proper backup. It also serves me in terms as a developer that if clients then decline that maintenance offer, that they can't then come back in 6 months and blame me when none of their updates have been done. So it saves any ambiguity on that question between myself and the client of who's responsible for the site on an ongoing basis once the project's finished.
What percentage of your clients take up your maintenance package?
I'd say about half.
And do you offer your maintenance package to new clients who have an existing site, they're just looking for support and maintenance?
I do, although I do have to ensure that the site is, I can get a proper backup of the site and have proper access to hosting and the database should anything go wrong. The last thing I want to do is be guaranteeing that I've got a secure backup of somebody's site if then it can't be restored because we don't have the proper access.
Mm.
Well, that actually happened to me once last week, so yeah.
Yeah, we all learn by the incidences we have to deal with, don't we?
We do indeed.
Question on Twitter from Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. She asks, how do you price your maintenance packages?
I do a standard maintenance package of £30 a month for basic WordPress updates, plugin updates, and a weekly backup. And then obviously restoration if needs be.
Is there any kind of like an hour of kind of fixing small tweaks or a certain time frame, or just kind of no, I'll do this update, I'll do this update, and
I'll do the updates. I mean, I will do small tweaks included in that. I'm not going to sort of quibble over a couple of lines of code, but I do have to. I don't have a. I will only do this amount of work and then I'll charge you extra. I do it on a per case basis. And then I do an hourly rate fee from there for any further work that I do.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the customizer?
I like the customizer. I like and loathe it. I like it in terms of, again, I can build it into the site so that I can give the client a little bit like the options page. I can give them the power to change their logo if they need to be, and so on. The going straight to the widgets annoys me. So when I click on a dashboard, from the toolbar and click on widgets from there, it goes straight to the customizer, which really annoys me. So yeah, love it and hate it, but I'd like to learn how to use it more. I think it's definitely the way things are going with WordPress. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about how I can use it within my WordPress, within my Genesis channel thing, and make it work a bit better for me.
Did I see someone tweet? Was it today? Something about the menus are going to move into the customizer in the next version of WordPress or something like that. So did you pick up on that, Gary?
I hadn't seen it today, but I think I have seen a mention of that before, just because it's content on screen, which obviously, yeah, you can imagine. Obviously, the main benefit of the customizer is that you get the live preview. So being able to change that, the menu content, it's in terms of where they're pushing the customizer, it does make sense for that to be there. I think the main and Otto has got a post about kind of customizing the customizer, or somebody else has got a post on that. So you don't have to feel that you're forced to do it just in this little sidebar on the side. You can make it wider as needed, so that you have got space to you put the user interface in there that is going to be most friendly to be able to change the menus and be able to update widgets and widget content and so on. So
Yeah.
So you see it going that way. I had a question, I've forgotten what it was now. Jackie just says she doesn't like the customizer, she finds it slow. And apparently Rob New, who we all love, he wrote a plugin to fix the widget customizer link. So we will have to look out for that on Rob.
We'll Google that one.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
we'll definitely Google that one. It does drive me slowly mental. I think it is. I think it can be slow. I like the fact that you can see changes immediately. When you change things. But I still would prefer to go through the dashboard, I think. But for clients, it's a definite help.
Other than the CMS tree page plugin, I think you mentioned, do you customize the dashboard in any way in terms of making it easier for the client to edit their website or to contact you and so on?
I always use custom post types for things like testimonials, sliders, that sort of thing, just so that the client can, and again, that works really well with advanced custom fields, so that I can basically give them, I can block out all the other outside stuff other than things that I need them to have just for those sort of specific functionality. So again, it depends on the project scope, but I always sort of try and make sure that if I want the client to do something specific, then it's a menu option rather than them having to dig through to find it or have to customize posts in the editor.
So we've got 5 minutes left. We've got one more question before we kind of start wrapping up. Is you said you'd taken this the starter theme and you'd kind of tweaked it. How had you tweaked it? What do you have in all of your client sites?
All my client sites I always have Font Awesome included, so I can include those. I also have Flex Slider. I always have a Flex Slider included because I tend to use it more often than not on a site for sort of client testimonials or something like that. And I make sure I've got a mobile menu included in there for responsive as well. So those sort of 3 things are things that I've added that I always use on every site. So it just sort of takes that initial part of the development out of the project.
And is that kind of stored on a version control kind of GitHub or something like that, or is it just it's in a folder somewhere? You just clone that folder and start?
I just clone that folder. So I clone that folder every time, and then it evolves with each project. So each project, every time I find something cool that I think I'm going to use again, I'll stick it in there and reuse it. So it's in danger of getting somewhat bloated, but so you have to sort of keep control of it, I think. But yeah, it works well for what I do, and it gives me a theme that every single project that I do, even though each project's completely diverse, I know exactly where to find everything, and that speeds up the development process significantly.
Absolutely. Jackie just got back to us with the link to the Rob New plugin. It's on GitHub. The Rob New account, ROBNEU account. It's called Old School Widgets Menu. It's just a simple plugin on there to bring in sexy back, is how he's got it in the README. So we'll link to the old widget screens. He forgets. That's fine.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Let me just check there wasn't any other questions there. No, that's fine. So we'll start wrapping up then. So who would you most like to see on this podcast in the future?
I would very much like to see the tables being turned, and I'd like to see you, Gary, and Ben being interviewed in the hot seat.
Okay, well, I think there was an episode 0 where Ben and I we'd started off, and it wasn't going to be a podcast show. It was just a recording, and people would come in and just join the chat and so on. And I think Sridhar turned up, and I think there was one other person as well, and ended up kind of interviewing me in the meantime anyway. So that kind of episode 0 is kind of that. But we can do that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the
great as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, kind of outside the UK and
Absolutely.
doesn't generally for the UK, so not what we're focusing on and trying to boost the visibility of the UK-based Genesis folks. For the mention it now for the Genesis camp, we're hoping. I don't think we've actually been officially scheduled yet, but we have put in to do a sort of round table event for podcast for the Genesis camp. So probably on the Sunday, I suspect there'll be Ben and myself and a few others talking about something or other for one of the Genesis Camp sessions. So we've got that. Where can people find you online?
Online, they can find me. My portfolio website is suefernandes.co.uk. On Twitter, I'm at Sue Fernandes Web. So either of those, they can always get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to chat with anybody.
Excellent. So the guest for the next, or in 2 weeks' time, is Russell Jameson, who is one of the Genesis bods in the UK as well. Any other questions or points to make, Joe?
No. Actually, I was going to ask you. One quick question is, what's the next WordCamp you're going to?
I think the next one will be if we can get it off the ground. It's just in the planning stage at the moment, but we're hoping to have a WordCamp Manchester again later this year in the autumn. So yeah, I'll send it out on Twitter once we've got confirmation.
Okay, well, if we're all done then, thank you very much for joining us today, Sue. Thank you for co-hosting today, Joe. Thank you, Jackie, and everybody else on the Twitters for the questions. And we shall see you all in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.